Wonderful. I hope you all enjoyed the plenary talk. It was a great introduction, actually, to the day that we have today, the afternoon that we have today. So, by the way, my name is Tsinoremas. I am the director of the Institute for Data Science and Computing here at the Frost Institute for Data Science and Computing, I should say. So I'll tell you a little bit about the Institute. So the Institute actually is one of the organizers, by the way, of this event. And one of our programs is our Smart Cities and Smart Environments. And that's why we have a very much aligned, with our School of Architecture to bring together a number of different of thought leaders in this space, both from academic, but also from the public sector and industry to discuss a lot of what is happening around us and how the technologies affect our living environments and what that means for us from all aspects. So we have a great panel today in order to help us address some of these questions. Some other things that we're doing in IDISC, as a data science institute, we work actually with a lot of data. So we have a whole program that is around machine learning and AI, and we'll be discussing about this. We have a whole program, and actually some of our panelists are going to be representing the program is about data ethics and society. So how much of that data that we all produce, our buildings produce, ourselves produce, what does it mean? What are the safeguards? What are some of the things that we should and we should not be doing? And last but not least, we have actually what we call the human-centered computing, which is actually dealing with some of the things that our panelists, our plenary speaker, the keynote speaker, talked about. Is all about the extended reality, mixed reality, and so on. So again, you will see a lot of intersections and a lot of convergence of the different topics that what we do in the Institute and what we are discussing here today and what it's actually a lot more relevant in the world that we are living. So enough of that. So let's bring in our panelists together. So we have a great panel. And this is a little bit of a continuation. By the way, this is actually a continuation of a discussion that we had a few years ago of how data analytics, and so forth are influencing what we are doing in our everyday lives and how we are actually communicate with our environment and how we stay connected. So please, the panelists can come here for the first panel. And this is a little bit here. All right. We have a great panel today, and this continuation of the discussion, please, panelists. Take your seats. Hello. So, and I will take my seat as well, so I can see all of you, although I may have to move a little bit. So I'm one of these typical people that I like to hand wave and so forth. So everybody's looking at my hands and not paying attention to what I say, but that's, hopefully we will try to avoid this today. So anyway, so we have a great panel today. I will not necessarily go to the introductions myself. I will ask the panelists to introduce themselves. But what we are going to try to explore in this panel is that, as I mentioned before, the continuation of the discussion that we had a few years ago. But now we have some new things that are coming, on our horizon, right? About AI, about generative AI, about trustworthy AI. What does it mean? What are the safeguards? So we're going to explore a little bit of and demystify some of these concepts, if you will. We will also see what it is applicable and how far we can go, how far we can tolerate what we can do. And with that, I will ask again the panel, first of all, to introduce themselves briefly and what they do. And I will start with Ken, who's sitting next to me.
Thank you very much for that. Good afternoon. Thank you all very much for being here. Please, if you haven't visited the booths, do so. As a sentimental academic, there are universities from all over the place here. Go meet them and talk to them. My name is Ken Goodman. I have the privilege of being a philosopher at the University of Miami, where I direct our Institute for Bioethics and Health Policy, the overarching ethics programs, and most especially for our purposes today, IDIS Center program in data science and society.
Hi everyone, my name is Kim Grinfeder. I'm a professor at the School of Communication. I chair the Department of Interactive Media. I also run UMverse, which is the university's AR/VR initiatives, trying to link all the schools and colleges together with their XR programs. And I direct the human-centered computing vertical at the Provost Institute for Data Science and Computing.
Thank you. Hello everyone, my name is Sharmeen Yousif. I'm an assistant professor at Florida Atlantic University and director of the Environmental Design and Natural Materials Lab. I've been working on machine learning methods for generative design systems. For my PhD and post-graduating, I was also working on deep learning models. I'm an architect by training, and I hope that my discussion will be useful for the future cities and smart cities.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sarbeswar, Preharaj. I'm assistant professor at the Department of Geography here and Sustainable Development, as well as School of Architecture here at the University of Miami. My research enhances knowledge of smart cities. I have a PhD in smart cities from the University of New South Wales in Australia. And I look forward to this discussion.
Great, thank you. As you see, we have a pretty much diverse audience, panelists here. And I will start with a question. We are hearing a lot about artificial intelligence. So can you also, from your experiences, how that relates to the work that you are doing, how it relates to what is a city and a smart environment that we would want to live in or we should live in? What do you think, it's the appropriate level of what we call it artificial intelligence? But also go a little bit further and tell us your definition of artificial intelligence. Because if I ask everybody here, will give me a different definition. What do you think is artificial intelligence? What it should be artificial intelligence? And what you think it's used for us, in the immediate future or in the near future. I will start. Let's start with Preharaj.
Okay. Rather complex question. I would actually start with the latter than the former. We talk about AI for smart cities, right? When I embarked on my research on smart cities back in 2014, which is the year I started my PhD back in Australia, smart cities was a relatively new concept. It was emerging out of the Great Recession, as you all know. 2008-9, IBM came out with this concept of smart cities. It was a way out of the recession of how we leverage technology for efficiency and better quality of life. Now, if you look at the extensive practice we had since then, we have a convention saying smart cities are essentially the ones that are instrumented, that are interconnected, and that are intelligent, right? Now, we just saw the presentation, the wonderful presentation that laid out the range of sensors and devices and connectors. And if you look at translation into the city landscape, right? We are sitting in city of Coral Gables, and I can see the Chief Innovation Officer of the city. We have, most of the cities these days have this range of sensors and surveillance cameras that are dotted and plotted across the city that are collecting real-time data, right? That is instrumentation. That is the smart cities journey has brought us to, that we have instrumented our daily life. We're collecting a lot of data. The next phase is really the interconnectedness, right? That how do we gather this data and bring this into one place? And we struggled. If I look back, 2012 to 15, 16, 17, most cities were struggling because we have a lot of data, we don't know how to bring them together. They come from different data standards, different devices, all these vendors are coming, they have all different standards. How do we interpolate and bring this data into one place? That took quite some time, right? Building dashboards and talk about digital twins, where seamlessly integrate data to make sense of what is happening in real time and regulate the city process. AI, which I see in the last 3-4 years has emerged so strongly, is I think really leveraging and helping us to achieve the last leg, that is intelligence, right? Smart cities are instrumented, we have achieved that, interconnected, achieved to a certain extent, but the gap was really of how it actually translating to intelligence within the cities, within communities, and within this range of stakeholders that make our cities, right? And so when it comes to intelligence, you see how the devices are connected, they're producing data, and you are looking at application of AI, particularly with the deep learning models that we see today. They're very powerful in telling us, okay, what is happening in the current city in real time, right? How do we address those challenges? But then at the same time, you look at what is something called as edge computing, right? Which is really decision-making at the level of the devices, right? So you have AI embedded within your sensors and within your actual devices that are plotted right in the city. They are able to respond to the challenges, right? So decision-making that are automated. We heard about autonomous learning and autonomous decision-making. That brings a whole new set of challenges, right? Who are making these decisions? The decisions are based on these language models, right? Which are trained based on the range
We were
of data
going to make the decisions.
right? Sure. So we are making these decisions based on the model that is trained with the data that comes from the sensors and surveillance cameras and all that. But there are biases in these models. There are gaps in learnings. And when you make autonomous decisions, that exposes us to certain level of insecurity, that who is making the decision? Is the decision fair, just, particularly when it is autonomous? When we are taking the right away from our policymakers and stakeholders and giving it to technology. So how we navigate that world with AI in terms of autonomous decision is, I think, a challenge that we are grappling now, and I think we'll continue to grapple in the coming days and years. You wanted to go ahead?
Great introduction. So I think at this point I will ask, it was a very good introduction actually for Dr. Goodman to tell his thoughts about, to share his thoughts about the topic.
I'll be brief. Sorry to have interrupted. I was having a I was actually looking at the ceiling, and I was thinking about we have smart cities. We have, I hope, comprising smart buildings, which might even include smart houses. In an environment in which we have clearly either designed or allowed houses and buildings in cities to evolve such that they don't seem very smart, do they? In fact, some of them don't even capture what we would otherwise and uncontroversially understand to be our basic core civic values. One of the things that we all value is balancing the benefits of civil society with privacy. And I think we do on balance a tolerably good job of that. Smart cities, as you point out, are going to require and use a lot more information. And so how will the citizens of those cities manage to negotiate which of their information will be used in what ways? But if we allowed smart cities to evolve the way we've allowed our cities to evolve, well, they'd be monolingual, segregated, and people with disabilities wouldn't be able to get about very well. In other words, what we have an opportunity to do when we think about the future of architecture and the future of urban, suburban, and other kinds of life is to think about how we actually, for the first time in a very long time, have an opportunity for a do-over. Because if we actually allow history to repeat itself, with all due respect to you humans, you're going to make a hash of it again. You're going to allow your biases to creep in. You're going to allow your expectations of your benefits based on your status in life to creep in, and so forth. The philosopher John Rawls, any philosophers here beside me? Now then, you have to believe everything I tell you. Wonderful philosopher. He said, look, he was talking about if you're going to design a civil society, you ought to design it behind a veil of ignorance, wherein you are ignorant about where you will be socioeconomically in that system. Why? Because I have a job at the University of Miami. So what do I care about people who don't have a good job when it comes to designing a healthcare system? No, what I should do, what we all should do, is imagine we don't know where we are. And therefore, we're going to, eliminating that conflict that we're all oppressed by, would be more likely to design a city that's fairer for everyone. It could, if you value this, be able to celebrate diversity, equity, and inclusion. By the way, those are basic, uncontroversial moral values. They're not woke. When it comes to managing data, when it comes to doing other sorts of things, when it comes to making the trade-offs, which we do all the time, when it comes, for example, to privacy, we have an opportunity now through opportunities in smart city governance and participatory democracy to make the vision of a far more equitable, smoothly functioning, environmentally sustainable collection of ways to live to as well be more just.
Thank you, Ken. That was a very how can I say well thought, and also triggers quite a bit of I would say discussion. So Sharmeen, can you go for it?
This is very interesting. I'm trying to go back to define AI. In my perspective as a designer and architect and in urban planning, I was engaged in research in AI into two kind of modes of whether we use AI for creative exploration as designers and urban planners for future cities. Would AI give us different kind of design, maybe a proposition that can be maybe augmenting our own creativity, which in this case I was using deep learning models, these generative adversarial networks that you have heard of that produce deep fake videos, and also image-based models that are trained on data sets of images to actually give you maybe certain interpolation into different designs as images. So the outcome is slightly different from what you feed it. On the other side, AI has been also very useful for predictive capacities and how we can use AI trained on data sets to predict performance. For example, in my research, I was feeding AI models that are supervised floor plans and daylight simulations so that later the AI model is trained so that you give it only the floor plan design and it gives you the prediction of daylight performance with high accuracy. And that can be scaled up to urban planning and urban design. So with that, I think the advantages of AI are there for the design process. We still have issues of how you train those data sets or how you curate those data sets for training. And the issue of bias is already there. I don't know if you have noticed generative AI models, if you give them certain text prompts for certain design styles or architects or urban contexts, they're biased and they give you maybe stereotypical outcome versus if you try to be specific. I don't think they were trained on certain images that are specific to certain cultures and communities and cities. So we are aware of that. I think as designers, we know that we're not training those AI models, we receive them. So from the receiver's perspective, we wish that they were trained on specific architectural.
Should we?
Yeah. Well, it's a good question. I think as an architect, I wish I have a little bit of agency into refining the pre-trained AI model so that it can understand my concepts. So I use diffusion models in a way that I can train them on specific images so that at least I can communicate with them towards a specific concept. But I know that those diffusion models are data agnostic. They were not trained on what architects want. They were very trained on like generic type of data sets. And I agree with the question, should we or should we not? But I do think that in my understanding, the collaboration, the human AI collaboration as a skill is relevant and important for us as designers and urban planners. Whether we like it or not, I think this skill, this human machine collaboration is something we will have to maybe, or at least understand. Even if you resist it, I think it's already happening. And I'm trying to, in my research, to define that mode of collaboration. So when do you let AI give you results, and how do you evaluate those results, and how biased the results are, or how they're specific to certain contexts and tasks? And when do you take over as a designer and engage in curation of certain concepts and data, and also interpreting the results? So I do believe that AI has an advantage side to us as designers, but I think we have to be very careful with this collaboration.
Kim?
So to define AI, I think it's just a tool that processes a lot of data and comes out, detects patterns, and obviously comes out with an output for that. But there's a danger in that, because a lot of times we're just accepting the output. And when I think about smart cities or smart homes and things like that, I'm not a big fan of the name because it's not really the home that's smart, it's not really the city that's smart, it's a person who's interpreting the output that is smart. It really has to be, human has to, I think we can all agree that this is a tool, it's a collaboration between humans and machines that really are going to augment productivity and our understanding about the world. And as a school of and I work in the School of Communication, and I think very much about how we're communicating both with machines and obviously cities and homes, and we have to think about it. I really like the term that the previous speaker brought up, having a living house or a living building, and even, you know, we can bring that further into a living city. And if we think about living organisms, we communicate with them. And from the realm of communication where I am in, I have to think, okay, so how are we going to communicate with machines? How are we going to communicate with buildings? And I see two patterns emerging. The first one is and all of these three patterns, AI, and then the second one is XR, which is extended reality, which allows us for display, new forms of displays and visual technology, and overlaying a digital layer over the physical world. And the third one is natural language processing, which will allow us for conversational interfaces. I think that very soon we're going to be talking to computers a lot more rather than clicking and pressing buttons. And the same thing is going to happen to homes. And this is going to open up a wealth of possibilities for smart cities, because we're going to be able to communicate with them better. They're going to be able to listen to us better and adapt. Opening a window might not be a click like this through an interface, but simply saying, hey, open that window. And the home will be smart enough to be able to do that.
Right. Great. I will do a couple of more provoking questions to you. And since we're talking about smart cities, smart environments, smart buildings, technology-driven kind of things, and artificial intelligence, how would you say, and how would you see, how can I put it in the way, how, you know, technology can help us do operational decisions versus the technology itself making decisions for us? Because this is where we're talking a little bit about, sometimes we confuse the whole discussion of what it is. We call it artificial intelligence. Computer science, artificial intelligence has been around since the 60s, right? So that's why the original developers slash engineers of the computer put something that it's called memory, because they were trying to mimic the human brain, right? And still trying to mimic the human brain. So that's not necessarily new, but I would like you to challenge you a little bit, because we are using these terms a little bit too loosely, I would say, and sometimes we create a lot of panic to certain segments of the population. We think that basically, the robots will come in here and they will, take over the world. And in some other cases, it's more operational aspects that we use technology to make it easy. For example, robots have been building cars for decades now, right? But they are not necessarily making decisions about the design of the cars, but they are actually building the cars. So I would like a little bit you to think about, how we can distinguish some operational aspects of the environment, and how this is, a real, what I would call, not a real, but what is at the next level of artificial intelligence of, making decisions independent of the humans. Tim?
I think this is where XR technologies and AI are really going to shine. Humans have evolved to think spatially and to think about the world in 3D. And right now we're stuck in this 2D world. We see buildings and dashboards and everything in 2D. But being able to spawn a digital twin of a building, for example, or a city, and visualize it in 3D, have live data feed in to that, will really allow us to, and simulate what would happen under certain conditions, would really allow us to make decisions better. It really brings visualizations onto the next level.
I mean, I think from the design perspective, I don't think AI is actually deciding. I think it's giving us information or data and prediction that leads to informed decisions that we are taking. I do believe that accuracy and the power of AI models to process and give us data accurately is strong, or it's something, one of the strengths. But I think we take decisions, and I'm afraid actually of that concept of how AI takes decisions for us. I don't understand it. I think it's a very big like topic and idea. But I do think that the way we engage with AI right now is that they're task specific, right? So they're trained for specific tasks, and they can only give you information or data on that particular task. And I think as designers, we became more like choreographers or curators, where we connect multiple AI models so that each one is maybe addressing specific tasks, and our job is how leading from this AI to connected to that AI, whether that connection is actually successful and leading to a progressive good decision or informed decision. And in my case, I think this multiplicity of AI models and the fact that they should be multiple AI, not just one AI. So I think in my definition of AI is actually an ecosystem of AI models, because each one is specific to certain tasks, and design and urban planning and considering the complexity of cities is a huge activity and complex activity that I don't think one AI model can do a decision or take a decision. So I think the dynamic of the process of designing and urban planning has to do with multiple AI models connected, while designers and urban planners engage in input and output, and how do they make sense and make decisions based on these outputs, but also they engage in how they connect those AI models towards more informed decision, towards, let's say, intelligent kind of process where we have performative aspects considered, environmental aspects, addressing all of the decarbonization, net zero, and all of these objectives, so that we, in the end, take the decisions. That's how I see that decision-making process.
Great.
Well, I think you raised a very interesting argument that AI has been here, right? 1960s, 70s, we have AI, and why is that suddenly there is, if you look at the graph of publications, I was looking at it, there was 250% growth since the ChatGPT came out, right? So there has been a change in the last 3-4 years since the GPT has came to scene, and that is predominantly because of the innovations in natural language processing, right? Particular specific applications where you are asking questions to a chatbot and it spits you some answers or scenarios, right? And it could be a chatbot, it could be a virtual assistant, a digital assistant, and that you are seeing now that increasingly we have websites of universities, cities that has a chatbot, right? And it is giving you certain, lot of companies, they're removing their service industry. So when you call a company, you are not now getting somebody to respond to the question, rather you have a digital assistant. Now, in the city space, if you're talking about communities and cities, I know many cities have already implemented this, including the city of Coral Gables, where you're sitting, they have something called IDA. If you look at New York, they have something called My City Chatbot, NYC. Most cities, London has their own chatbot. Now, you ask certain questions, it goes back to a lot of the data sets, right? It goes back to policies, zoning records, guidelines. You can ask a question, for example, I want to open my business, where should I apply? It gives you certain answers, right? But then it raises another set of challenges as far as community engagement and customer service is concerned, right? Are we treating communities and people, real people, as virtual agents? I mean, we have a long drawn debate on what you call digital divide, right? Is AI, smart city bringing us together, right? Is it bringing policymakers and the community together? Is it bringing companies and clients together? Or it's creating the divide, and it is increasing the divide. And that kind of challenges, there is opportunity certainly with efficiency, right? Service delivery, customer service, improving that. But at the same time, you have to be careful about how this new revolution in language processing would actually translate into a relationship building within cities and communities, policymakers and community, universities and students, all sorts of multi-directional relationships.
Before we go to Ken, just a quick point to see two different aspects of how artificial intelligence, or the term AI, has been used from two different, or three actually different perspectives. One is more about predictive modeling, right? So, and you can use predictive modeling of how you do your design and so forth. Another one was more about the chatbot, right? Instead of human to talk to a human, you talk to a virtual assistant where it guides you properly up to a point. And to the point that, Kim was bringing in, that, oh, well, AI is something, it's a tool. I'm using it, and I think, it brings all together in a 3D space. So you can see there that there is not a single part. So we all try to simplify things of what artificial intelligence means. But when we parse it, we all come from our own experiences, and we could give a little bit of a different aspect of what that could be and what it means. And with that, I will ask Ken to tell us.
So there's a thread here, right? And the thread is, what an interesting and exciting new technology. And as soon as we begin to have that thought, we're thinking, what's cool stuff we could do? And in the same breath, how can we make things better for everyone? There are people in our community who don't have any kind of home. They live in the city can be as smart as you want to make it, but they don't have a roof over their heads. There are children in Miami-Dade County who are hungry tonight. We have a number of challenges, and we've been mindful of them. One of the things that I find exciting about technology, new technology, whether it's artificial intelligence or not, artificial intelligence, as Nick wisely points out, is a metaphor. I was trying to explain to somebody that even the logos for clouds look like clouds. Have you ever noticed that? We've actually got pictures of the metaphor. In fact, the cloud is actually a server that's plugged into a wall somewhere. That wall is in a state, in a country that's governed by certain kinds of laws. And what we're discovering now, and this may be good for people interested in smart cities, is a bit of international harmonization around what values we ought to be sharing, embracing, promoting, or insisting on. And sometimes when left unfettered, we get it wrong. One of the greatest challenges, in fact, everybody in this room could answer the following quiz. I want you to identify 5 ethical, social, or legal issues related to artificial intelligence. How cool is it that in a very, very short time, a community, a civilization that wasn't sure what it was a year ago, now is thinking about ways it needs to worry about it. And I think that generally speaking, that's good. It's good in terms of transportation. It's good in terms of housing and urban planning. It's good in terms of science and medicine and other pursuits like that. But I think that thinking of it as an opportunity to get things right, where too often in the past we have allowed our, you know the story, artificial intelligence is no match for natural stupidity. And sometimes we humans can be really rather quite stupid, especially when it comes to questions around fairness and justice and equity. So I say, now we have a chance to get it right. And when we think of cities, we can think now of ways that this new technology, whether it's AI or not, to do a better job of using information technology. We didn't do a good job before we had back propagation algorithms, but still had a lot of power to make calculations. And the thing that Kim said is very important about following patterns in databases. There's an old philosopher's trick. And we're gonna get everyone in the room to shout out an answer. This is the call and response part. I'm gonna give you a series of positive integers, and you're going to give me the next one in the series. Everybody ready? 2, 4, 6, 8. Wrong. That's because it's 11. 2, 4, 6, 8, 11. You see, you increase by 2 3 times, then you increase by 3. That maybe then you increase by 3 times until you increase by 4. In other words, you didn't know the end of the series. You may never know. We could go 2, 4, 6, 8 to 2,436,000,036, and the next one will be 437 or 39 or whatever. The world is usually not that perverse and complicated, but it's a cautionary tale about what it means to be following a rule or following a pattern. And until we have a better job gathering data for those algorithms, do a better job writing the algorithms to accommodate buggy, dirty, and sometimes corrupt data, then we need to take all of these exciting opportunities with a bit of progressive caution, if you will. We don't know that the pattern is valid yet. And yet here we are using AI to drive cars, to fly airplanes, to practice medicine and nursing. And while I think on balance that's really good, for all of those things you want to make sure that the people who are in the car, on the plane, and in the surgical theater actually trust the people who've designed it.
And if I can add something about designing with patterns, be careful about the fringe cases. Be wary of the fringe cases.
Fringe cases. So, now we can open it up, and even for you, all of you, to ask questions to the panel. Do we have any questions? I'm sure that there will be quite a few questions, so don't be shy. Questions? Okay, we have one question. I'm sure that there will be a lot of questions.
So, Mark Abair, nice to meet you all again. My question goes to sort of what you're talking about, Ken, but all the panels talked about this, and that's the oi-social quality of AI. So AI is an outgrowth of our human behaviors and patterns in our history, and we now know from the likes of David Graeber and David Wengrow that those patterns are not accurate, that civilization was not this smooth rise once we dug a hole in the ground and stuck a seed in. So how do we go about rearranging ourselves socially to get the outcomes that we think we say we want, and yet, AI leads us, into this new world order, so to speak?
That's a great question.
Yeah,
So,
the questions were not supposed to be difficult, though.
we actually make it explicitly for you, Ken, to be difficult.
Look, I am, perhaps as we all are these days, really rather quite sentimental about the deliberative process that's reflected in a robust democracy. We will solve this problem as best we can. It may not be adequate, because goodness knows in the past when we've had problems, we've not always done our best. And so I want to be able to say, entities like this, I mean, what we've done here at the University of Miami, the School of Architecture, and at IDISC, I think is a really important way to begin the conversation about how we are to produce a community that's the one we aspire to, not the one we dread.
Right. And actually, I will ask a little bit of a following up question to this, to the rest of the panel, is that, you know, we talked about some of the pitfalls and some of the, you know, misuses of the term AI and so forth, and understanding all of this. So since we are in a university environment, what do you think is the responsibility of academic institutions to actually infuse you know, a lot of these ideas and a lot of this understanding to the students? Because when we all go and graduate and we don't understand what is happening, perhaps, you know, what is the responsibility for educational institutions like, you know, University of Miami or FIU or other, for that, in order to also address some of the concerns that Mark brought up? Who wants to take that? Kim? Okay.
I mean, I think it's a media literacy. It's a literacy. You have to understand, a literacy concern. You have to understand, I mean, I often get the question from, you know, will AI take my job? I mean, we hear that all the time. And the right answer is no, AI won't take your job. It's people who know how to use AI who will take your job. Because it's going to increase productivity. The person who could do X is now going to be able to do X, Y, and Z because they're going to be assisted by these tools. And it's our responsibility to teach our students to use these tools.
I agree. I teach an AI-driven design studio, and my students have similar questions. And I tell them, no, AI is not capable of doing this and this right now. And then one student said, like, but it's going to be able to do it in a few years. So I guess I do agree that I think for me, teaching them how to interact with AI models is more like a skill that they need to have. A skill set. I think back in the 80s, we had CAD modeling as a skill. CAD modeling, and then we had parametric and generative design systems in design and architecture. And then recently we are engaging in AI as a new skill and literacy that we need to also maybe interact with and educate our students. Because they will graduate and they will be hired and they will be required to have this human AI collaboration mode and helping them. Now with that, I understand that some students actually have concerns about the AI ethics and bias issues. We all agree with that, but I think it's a literacy, like a question. Like I would like them to learn about how to engage with AI models. To understand that it's their agency that is maintaining the process, and it's an extended skill or capacity to their designer skills, rather than it's taking over their jobs or their future career. I see it, for me, I see AI not as a threatening or something to be afraid of. I think it's an extension to our abilities. Yeah, that's how I see it.
In many ways, it's liberating.
Well, if I had to add something to this, I think the opportunity is in collaborative space. If we, based within universities, we have the technologies, and we can work as a test bed, as a living lab, but the real opportunity will manifest if we are collaborating with the communities and cities to work on real world data sets. Often we think sitting within the universities, we have produced a lot of data, but does it reflect the real world? You know? And if we can constantly do that, if we can devise joint mechanism to produce joint research, collaborative research, then you could test those ideas, in real world and see how much it works. And I think as AI, collaboratively we can train the AI to produce scenarios, not a set answer, right? Currently it's giving us set answers. What if we could train the AIs to produce scenarios that together as a community we can debate? There's a space for negotiation. And then that can engage and inspire dialogue rather than just having a closed box in front of us.
I just, this is a really good point about collaboration. I run the virtual experience simulation lab here at the University of Miami, and we have 35, 36 students working in the lab from 15 different majors. And this is how it's affecting everybody. It really shows that, the students are interested in this, they want to learn, and they're coming from everywhere.
Great. Any more questions? We have, okay, yes, we do. Actually, one more question, and one and last question, but I think this is an important question. And if you were not going to ask a question, I was going to actually call you to ask a question and tell us who you are.
Hello, my name is Masah. I'm a freshman here at the University of Miami. So the question I had is, how can we ensure a united front between all levels of countries with varying levels of resources and intellectual divides to ensure a united front in implementing smart cities rather than creating another chasm of inequality between countries that have the resources to implement this and countries that don't?
We admit really smart students to the University of Miami. That's going to solve those problems. It's a great, by the way, can I ask how many students are in the room? So welcome. Your question is a question that I'm hoping quite seriously that we will be able to join in some intergenerational collaboration on answering those questions. We've done a poor to mediocre job the previous part of the last couple thousand years of civilization. Now's the time for you guys to get it right.
Any more answers?
Building these models is all about representation, and we need to make sure that everybody is represented in it. And that is a really good question and something that I hope will be solved.
Well, I would say thanks for coming to the students. I can see they're all in my class. So thank you for participating.